I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and leadership coach. This is my co-host, R.P. Soriano. Soriano attended Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, worked in the financial industry, and was an international consultant before partnering with me to launch UnBoxed to Lead. Me? Well, I worked for over 20 years as a senior pastor and a community organizer. Then I retired and started a leaders peer support community called UnBoxed to Lead. Soriano and I have been friends since the early 90s, and with our varied experiences and expertise, we help leaders reach the next level in their leadership. So join us for the next few moments as we unbox the power and the potential of your relationships, your leadership, and your life.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the UnBoxed broadcast. We are continuing our conversation about how leaders can create a positive workplace culture. I'm R.P. Soriano, and joining me once again is Dr. Robert Davis. We talked a little bit about, we started off defining what a positive workplace culture was. And we talked about how a team has to understand and believe in the mission and vision. And so we talked about what it means to be purposeful. And now we started to talk about the next part of this. And I'm going to let you bring that in, Robert. I don't want to steal your thunder. So what's the next part of this? And
so the next thing, and it naturally builds off of it. And I love the way that we ended our last show, because it naturally builds off of it, which is the team members are working towards the vision. So not only do they understand it, but that they're working towards the vision. And I kind of want to bring this. Let me go ahead and stir the pot. There are organizations that work toward providing women with access to abortion services. And there are organizations that work to limit access to abortion services because they believe that abortion is murder. And so you have two sides. If you have someone working for an organization that is, actively working to expand women's access to abortion services, who believes that abortion is murder, you get where I'm coming from? That's a very bad thing. They're just there because they need a paycheck. It's like, man, I got to eat, so I'm just doing this. But I don't believe in none of this stuff. I'm totally opposed to it. One of the things that a leader seeks to do is through one-to-one relationships with team members to really get a sense of. And I use an extreme example there, of course. But I wanted to, but it was for the purpose of illustrating the point. One of the things that a leader wants to do is to really glean and to gain an insight into whether this is something that their team members also are excited about. So, we talk about believes in the mission and vision. Is it something that you are excited about? Or is this just a paycheck? And then that's something else for the leader to think through. I'm not going to tell a leader what they should do in that situation. It's something else for a leader to think through, because the second part of it are the team members actually working towards the vision? And this is engaged. So are they purposeful and are they engaged? And that's, again, that comes from the book. I read the quote earlier. That comes from the book, The Anxious Organization. So you want to make sure that your team members are actually engaged. And that's what you're looking for when we talk about a positive workplace culture. It's not whether or not everybody likes each other and whether they're all holding hands and they do, from 12 to 1 o'clock, they all sit in a circle and do yoga together and do the ohms and all that stuff. But whether or not they're actually engaged in the work that they're doing.
I think one of the pitfalls that I've had early on in my leadership is I've always been good with expressing the vision. And that one-on-one piece that you're talking about, it's always been one-sided. It's always been continuing to kind of preach, evangelize, convince, and not doing so much listening. And so I've always walked away with conversations with direct reports, thinking that we have an understanding. I've articulated, I've been clear on what the vision is, and I've interpreted that as them being engaged.
Yeah.
But the output, I was always scratching my head saying, well, how come I'm not getting the results? And it's exactly what you said. It's the one-on-one piece and being able to gauge if the person is actually engaged comes from listening and really being able to pull out of them instead of just, beating the drum. And I think a lot of leaders who may be able to relate to this is that, you're basically, I've known some leaders, and I've done this as well. I've brought people together and I've basically done it under the guise that I want to get input from everyone.
Yeah.
But really what I've done is I've tried to create a situation where I've said, okay, I want to get everybody's input, but that's really not what I wanted. What I really wanted to do was everyone is there, but ultimately you're going to do it the way that I want it to be done. And they walk away, I think that I've fooled, and that's one of the things that I've learned in leadership. I'm not fooling anybody.
You're not fooling anybody.
I'm not fooling anybody. They may walk away and not say anything. They may not. I may think, oh man, I've really communicated this well. We're going to be firing on all cylinders. And now look, and I go, man, why is nothing happening? It's because everyone has said, well, I can't really talk to this guy. I can't really even explain where my challenges are. Why am I not being engaged? So they just do the bare minimum, the least that they can do. And that's exactly what ends up happening. I think a lot of leaders tend to fall into that trap is that, you've got everybody there. You think you're building consensus, but nobody is engaged. They all know that they're there to just basically, they're giving their ideas and their input, but really at the end of the day, it's not really going to be significant. They're not going to be, they have no opportunity to be engaged.
And therein lies the problem. Yeah.
And therein lies the problem. And I've watched more projects stall because of my personal inability with making sure that everyone is engaged and giving them also the environment to be able to talk through this without feeling that there's going to be repercussion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Saying, I can't share how I'm really feeling because this guy's just going to think, well, I need to get this person out of here so I can get someone who will do my bidding, who will do what I need them to do. So anyway, that's just kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. And I want to say this before we go into the next point. I remember I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine who himself is a phenomenal leader. But he was talking about an organization that we were both familiar with, and he was talking about how the morale of the organization was so low. And then I began to say to him, you're saying that the morale is low because of the leader of the organization. I said, but let's talk about this for a moment. I said, in every measurable way, the organization is growing. And not only is the organization growing, but it's reaching all of its benchmarks, and the team members are engaged in doing their job. And so there may be a few individuals who are unhappy and disgruntled, but that doesn't mean that the workplace is not a positive workplace, because 2 or 3 people are annoyed, frustrated, think that they should have been the one that got a particular promotion. You can't do anything about that. But if people are engaged, if they understand the vision and they are engaged, that's what you're looking for. And those things, engagement, can be measured. It can be measured. Which let me go into the third one, and that is that when we talk about what is a positive workplace culture, it is a culture where team members know what is expected of them, and I call this clarity. A workplace that is clear, where team members know what is expected of them. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more about the leader's responsibility towards this. But sometimes you have 2 things. You have people that are bumping into each other because no one really knows what they're doing. You have situations where just a few people, handful of people, 2 people, 1 person is doing everything. And the other folk are just kind of sitting around spectating. That again is a clear indication that there's a lack of clarity. When you have a few people doing everything, or where you have everyone doing everything and they're bumping into each other. So a positive workplace culture is where there is clarity and people have a thorough understanding of what their responsibility is, what they're supposed to be doing and not doing. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, and how the leader brings that into existence, and what is their responsibility relative to bringing that into existence. So clarity, where everyone understands this is what I do. Within our organization, my responsibility is to develop the curriculum, to facilitate the support groups, to facilitate the mastermind groups and things. Your responsibility is to develop the marketing strategies and plans, to do all the work that's behind the scene, to build the ship, if you will. My job is to sell the ship once it's built. So that's, and I know that's very elementary for those who are watching this, but it helps. And I think one of the things that has helped us is the clarity around who does what and who's responsible for what, so that there's not, oh, I thought you were going to do it. No, you were supposed to do that. And it's not that, hey, man, I was going to do that, but you took over and did it. It's kind of, hey, we understand what each of us are responsible for doing. And let's hunker down and get what we're supposed to be doing, taken care of. And I say that because I want people to know that at UnBoxed to Lead, we really are very intentional about living out the principles that we talk about and that we teach on this broadcast and within our community.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important, and I think a lot of times this is important no matter the size of your organization.
Exactly.
Like if you're in a large organization, it is extremely important because there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of layers, and it really becomes important that that you have that clarity. But it's also extremely important when you're operating in a small or medium sized or smaller organization as well, because I mean it's just extremely important when you're not only at the size of the organization, but also especially if you're resource strapped. So we work with a lot of nonprofits, we work with a lot of community organizations, and the challenge of not having enough resources, not having enough available to use sometimes to get the job done, really means that you have to be crystal clear on what everybody's place is and what is expected of everyone. Because there's just so little room for error when you're working in that context. When you're off by a little bit, we used to have this saying. This saying, law enforcement talks about this as well, and in the military, you fire a weapon. If you're off by a millimeter, the more that bullet travels, the more off you become. So that's millimeters right. Become feet, and that can be absolutely deadly. The longer the bullet travels, the more off you are. And so it becomes extremely important, especially in small organizations, that you are crystal clear on what everyone should be doing. And people will, and your staff, like you've articulated so well, that is what a positive workplace is about. It is that sense of, I'm clear on what I should be doing. I'm not confused on anything. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I feel like I'm actually accomplishing something, and I'm not stressed or anxious because no one is clear about anything. Everyone is just saying, you can't operate in panic mode all the time. And if you're operating that way, you're just not clear on anything.
Exactly.
And that can happen in small organizations, in particular, resource strapped organizations where everyone has to probably wear many hats. But even in that instance, it helps you if you are as clear as possible on what's going on. Okay, so let's move on to the final piece here.
And the fourth one, and I'm going to recap them. Number one is team members understand and believe in the mission and vision. They're purposeful. Number two, team members are working toward the vision. They're engaged. Number three, team members know what is expected of them. That's clarity. This is a positive workplace culture. And number four, team members take responsibility for their emotional well-being and functioning. And again, like I said, too often we try as leaders to come up with programs, activities, tactics to make people happy. You are not responsible for someone else's happiness. Yeah, and I want to give an example. This is very important about you're not responsible for someone else's happiness. A leader goes to an individual and says, hey, listen, this is the end of the quarter. So I just wanted to remind you that all of the reports that you've been doing monthly, at the end of the quarter, you have to do a summary of all of the monthly reports. Now, that is just a factual statement. It's simple, calm, nothing. The person then gets upset and says, man, he makes me angry. She makes me angry. Why? She makes me angry because she comes in and gives up all these responsibilities and extra things that I have to do. And man, I'm angry and this and the other. And it's on her. No, another person cannot make you angry. You see where I'm coming from? No one can make you angry. No one can make you happy. That's why so many marriages are in the situation that they're in, is because we're looking for the other person to make us happy. I was no longer happy. No one is responsible for you. No one can make you happy. That's such a poor way of looking at relationships. Only you can make you happy. So two people can hear the exact same thing. One person breaks out laughing, another person breaks out crying. And so it's not the joke, it's not the statement. It is how that is interpreted. That is how that is received and interpreted and filtered through a person's, experience, trauma, et cetera, et cetera. And so when teams, and this is really a very important one, because a leader can only manage themselves. They can only grow up themselves. They can only be mature themselves. But a positive workplace culture is increased when the team members recognize and take responsibility for their own emotional well-being and functioning. I am struggling with this, so let me try to get help. Now, it's wonderful when the organization provides those helps, but when team members says, hey, listen, I am responsible for how I show up. I am responsible for how I feel. I am responsible for what I do and what I say, how I interact, how I function within relationships. And I want to take this one step further if I can. Positive workplace cultures are created when team members are responsible for self and only self. As I shared just a moment ago, too often leaders, and because leaders really do help to thermostats that control the temperature within their organization, that controls the temperature within their team, leaders can begin to send signals that trickle down. And the signal is, we're responsible for how each other feels. This is a classic way of spreading anxiety throughout an organization, where one or more individuals believe that they're responsible for how another individual thinks or feels. And so when one individual is angry, annoyed, upset, sad, frustrated, you see this kind of clamoring to let's solve this. It's going to be okay. And while men and women have different ways that they manifest this, men and women both do this, which is to try to regulate and to control and to soothe the emotions of other people.
I am definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
Because I'm generally not comfortable when other people are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so there becomes this rush to that. I think the opposite of that is when people say things like, I'm sorry you feel that way about this. And then there's this complete void or absence of understanding of the role that you actually play. While I totally agree with you. Look, I can't, just because I'm giving you some factual information and you're upset by it, I can't control that. However, I still have to be present in my tone, my delivery, whatever the case may be. And if you are upset about it, I need to be open to listen to see if this is legitimate. But I hear this statement all the time, I'm sorry that you felt that way. I'm sorry you felt that, you're not, that doesn't make any sense. So there has to be a better way to kind of avoid those extremes, to where the person listening is hearing, to where they're constantly being coddled, or you're constantly trying to, make them happy. And then the complete opposite, where you're saying, basically, I'm trying a tactic that I've heard, and I'm incorrectly doing this by saying that I hear you, but really, I don't hear you at all.
And in the next couple of seconds that we have, let me just say this. The leader is responsible for self and only self. Team members are responsible for self and only self. One of the things that I used to share with my children, and I guess they would say to themselves, well, then why don't you practice it? And that is, when you are interacting with your parents, because, you got to respect your parents. But when you're interacting with your parents, the three things to really consider, and that is tone, volume, and selection of words. That's what I can control. I can control my tone, whether it's sarcastic, whether it is condescending, whatever it may be. I can control the tone. I can control the volume, whether it's loud, aggressive, whatever. And then I can also control the choice of words. And leaders need to think more about that than how the other person is going to feel. Am I being intentional about my tone? Am I being intentional about my volume? And am I being intentional about my word selection? And then the other person, I just can't control how you feel. I can't control, what's going on inside your mind. So what I need to do is to think about the one person and only person that I have absolute control over, which is self. And again, oftentimes in organizations, other people try to go and rescue the people on their team. Oh, you're sad, you're upset. It's like you said, we often are uncomfortable when other people are uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And that is a clear sign of emotional fusion. But the more that I can be comfortable with someone else's being uncomfortable, the more comfortable the other person becomes. I think I need to say that again. The more I can be the more I can be comfortable with someone else's discomfort, the more comfortable the other person becomes.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. And I think that tees us up for our next conversation, where we will break into the leader's responsibility in creating a positive workplace. And we'll discuss that in detail when we come back and help you unbox the power and potential of your leadership. You see what I did there? I know you like it when I say that, Robert.
UnBoxed provides a full-service leaders peer support community that helps high-level leaders become more authentic leaders who build healthy workplace cultures and reach their personal life goals. To learn more and discover how we can take your leadership and your life to the next level, please visit our website at unboxedtolead.com. That's unboxed, 2lead.com. Again, that's unboxed, 2